Millions spent at Book One, Willie Mullins readying his powerful squad for the jump season, and are we set for the best Champion Stakes in recent memory? It's all to come on the front page. Hello and welcome to all of our front page viewers, listeners and devoted followers of my two guests today. Two of the Racing Post's brightest talents, of course, Liam Head, Lambourn correspondent to my left, and a few hundred miles away, Ireland Deputy Editor David Jennings. We'll get stuck straight into it and reflect on a busy weekend at Newmarket, starting with a surprise result in the Dewhurst, Liam.
Yeah, Andrew Balding claiming top honours in that with Goan. A brilliant performance, and he's certainly bounced back from obviously disappointing run the last day. I thought it was obviously a great run. I was a little bit surprised to see him go sort of joint favourite for the 2,000 guineas, just on the basis of what we've seen. I was at Newbury the day he won on his debut. I thought he was very impressive, but we're already talking about the classics. I know these are obviously pointers for the 3-year-old campaigns for a lot of these horses, so it'll be interesting to see how things develop over the next sort of the early stages of next year when we're really getting into the thick of it. But yeah, brilliant performance, 25-1, huge shock really at the price, and beat a decent enough field. So it seemed to probably get a little bit overlooked. In the market, there was obviously Aidan O'Brien had a few big contenders in there that didn't quite sort of live up to the expectations that we might have thought, as his string have been doing all year. So yeah, a very good performance nevertheless, and another Group 1 for the Balding team.
No, absolutely, and DJ mentioned there of the Aidan O'Brien ones in behind, perhaps not living up to expectation. What was your take of the first classic of the season, as it's known?
I don't like that term, but anyway, I thought the horse who did most things right on the day won, but I can't see him winning a Guineas, to be honest with you. He's just maybe I can. That's a bit harsh, but he's just a nice horse who did things right, and those in behind him I didn't think did things right, especially Gstaad, who is hard to pronounce and was hard to handle in the first half of the race. I thought Christoph was doing well to try and get any sort of a lid on him. And to be honest, when Distant Storm kind of went by Gstaad, I kind of thought Gstaad had finished out the back of the telly, but he actually kept at it, and he was closing down to the line, and it seems to me like he kind of went off course when he was supposed to go to the Phoenix Stakes, and he had to go to the Morning instead, and True Love switched with him, and I'd say that just hampered him a little bit, because he obviously had that little setback, and they've been trying to get him back, and I would say next season Gstaad will be a better horse than Goan. I know there was initially an underreaction to Goan's performance, because he drifted out, well, not drifted, but he was put in at maybe 20-1 for next year's Guineas. And I know Martin Dixon and Nick Luck were like, whoa, that's way too big kind of thing. And now he's like into tens, and I think that's way too short. And I think the only reason he's that price is because we don't have an outstanding juvenile. We've yet to see one. Maybe Albert Einstein, who we haven't seen since the start of the summer, might be the one. But I think we're just clinging on to anything, because usually at this stage you've got a 7-2 favourite for the Guineas. Now it's double figures the field. So I think it's just wide open. I think Goan is a lovely colt, and I think he'll win plenty of races, but I don't think he'll win next year's 2,000 Guineas.
And it did not take long for the first mention of the Prince over the water, Albert Einstein, the lesser spotted. Liam, 2,000 Guineas market was so far away, of course, so it's slightly stick a pin in it and guess. But what's your take on the general complexion of that division?
Yeah, I think to be honest, I think DJ's hit the nail on the head really. I mean, Goan obviously now a Group 1 winner, and was the horse that did everything right on the day. There was a couple in behind that, there was probably excuses for some of them. So we'll probably see them to better effects, come sort of May time, when we're really in the depths of these classics. The market's so hard to pick right now, as you can say, and I think 10-1 going joint favourite is, at this stage you don't really know if that's good value or bad value. I think the from what we've seen this year on the juvenile division, the one that I would take out at the prices would be Bo Echo. I just think that he's been campaigned brilliantly by George Bowie. He's proven over a mile already that he can do it. And when we come to the 2,000 guineas, it's going to be the first run for a lot of these 3-year-olds next season. So going into that, having already proven over the distance, it is such a major advantage for these classic copes. And I think I was at Newbury the first day he won under Billy Loughnane, and the sort of reaction from connections that day was, we've got a real superstar in our hands here. And I think the way that they've handled him, he could have turned out a lot more. He could have featured a lot more this season, but they've been patient with him. They obviously know that the 3-year-old campaign is, the bread and butter for these sort of horses. It's so early in their career. So I think he can be a superstar in the making. So I think he'd be the one sort of I'd take out at this stage.
Superstar in the making, and we might have another imprecise winner of the Fillies Mile, DJ, for that man again, Aidan O'Brien.
Just to go back to Liam's point there about the Colts and Aidan O'Brien and Albert Einstein, I interviewed Aidan for the Big Read a couple of weeks ago, and I know people think he's saying these things and it's a sales pitch for stallions and all this, which it obviously is, but it is just interesting when you get his initial reaction for stuff, because we were talking about the 2-year-olds, and I cannot express how superior in his head Albert Einstein is to Gstaad. So when we're talking about him, he was like, Gstaad, yeah, lovely coach, said all the right things, and then we moved on to Charles Darwin and said all the right things. So when he started talking about Albert Einstein, it was just his voice changed, his tone changed, the words changed, everything changed. It was like as if he was like, you wouldn't believe what this fella was doing earlier on in the year. Like he goes, he was finishing ahead of these 2-year-olds, vastly superior to them. And at that stage I said to Aidan, because he was so superior, did you think they were a really bad crop? And he goes, well, that was the fear, he said, because this Albert Einstein was so superior that maybe they're just not that good this year. And then these horses have obviously turned out to be the Gstaads, the Charles Darwins, the horses that are winning so many Group 1s, the Puerto Ricos. So the horses obviously that Albert Einstein was beaten in his gallops early on have turned out to be proper Group 1 colts. So now they're kind of thinking, whoa, what have we got in our hands here? And I'd say if they didn't think as highly of him as they do, we would have seen him again. Because I said to Aidan, would you not, is he going to be the horse we thought he was because of the setback? He goes, don't worry about the setback, he's back now, he's cantering, and everything is leading towards the Guineas for him next season, and he could be the one maybe to, Aidan's recent record in the Guineas has been pretty poor, so maybe he's the one to maybe jump forward. And I just thought it was, when he started talking about Charles Darwin, he said, you wouldn't believe the pace of Charles Darwin. He said, this horse is so fast, hopefully he'll make the Breeders' Cup, and he's just a rocket, he's so fast. And I said, he's obviously faster than Albert Einstein then, is he? And he was like, no way. And I was like, but you're after saying, so honestly, I cannot express enough how high he holds Albert Einstein. So it's going to be interesting. He obviously has to get to the track. But on the fillies, it's just precise. It's just your typical Aidan O'Brien filly improving for racing, because she is just 3 weeks ago composing was way ahead of her in the pecking order, way ahead, and now all of a sudden precise is the best thing since sliced bread. Of course, sliced bread was exceptionally quick, but I just think precise is just we've seen it over the years, we've seen your loves, your mindings, we know the way this story goes, and they just get better and better and better, and all of a sudden from just about winning that race against Moon Target at Goodwood, the Prestige Stakes, she's just kept jumping forward, and I'd say there's loads of improvement to come from her. Aidan O'Brien just seems to have a real handle on the fillies races, as we saw this year, with Mini Hawk and Whirl. So I think it's going to be a similar case next year. She just looks like she's going to be better at 3 than she was at 2, and she's obviously vastly superior to everything else at 2. So it's going to be interesting to see what route she goes in comparison to Diamond Necklace. Obviously, Diamond Necklace potentially maybe could be their Oaks filly, whereas Prestige could be their Guineas filly, but they get intertwined really, the fillies, because they seem to be able to run over any trip. So yeah, I think it's safe to say Aidan O'Brien will probably win plenty of classics next season with fillies, John.
Yep, that's all the big calls on this programme as always. Aidan O'Brien winning plenty of classics. Liam, if hypothetical world where you are an 8-stone jockey and you had the choice of riding Diamond Necklace or Precise, who would that be?
Yeah, well, first of all, 8 stone was a long time ago for me. But I think precise. I think the way that she took that race on Friday, was just coming through the gears. It was almost like Sumion just hit a button and off she went. And I think she's had 2 more races now than Diamond Necklace. She's won 2 from 2 in Britain now. I think she'd be the one to certainly take forward, and I think she just looks at another classic star in the making. DJ alluded to that Aidan's record with these fillies this year again has just been instrumental, the way he handles them and puts them in the right races. So I do think that she'd be the one to certainly take out the 2. Be interesting to see when we come sort of March, April time, when we're approaching these races. Ryan Moore's back from injury, and that often gives us a guideline of the stronger out of the stable team, because he would often choose the horse with the better chance, you'd feel. So, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see how things pan out.
Absolutely. And while we're talking 2-year-olds, and while I have my notebook open to scribble down your answer, can you give me and everybody following from home a 2-year-old to follow for, or 3-year-old rather, to follow for next season from this year's juveniles?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with my patch Lambourn. Ed Walker's got a Starman filly, the Prettiest Star. She was really impressive. She won a Nottingham on her debut by just under 5 lengths, and she just looks to have the sort of decent pedigree to be a proper sprinter next season in all the top Group 1 races. She was second the last day, and she just looks like a really eye-catching prospect for Ed Walker, who again is having a really great season. I know I've spoken to him many a times, and he really thinks highly of this filly. She's owned by David Ward, who obviously owns Starman. And Starman in his first year has done tremendously well. Obviously, Venetian Sun being sort of the highlight of Starman's crop, and the Prettiest Star. She only finished, I think it was half a length behind Xanthos in the Rockfell. So she just looks like an exciting one to keep in the tracker for next year.
There we have it. That's one to add. DJ, come to you next. Is it Albert Einstein, or do you have another one up your sleeve?
No, that's a bit too obvious. No, wouldn't take a genius to pick Albert Einstein. I'm going to go for a horse who I was blown away by on debut. And it just goes to show you, I'm picking a random one here because he's had 2 starts and he's ran at Kempton and Bath, would you believe? I love a Frankel colt called Item that Andrew Balding trains. Colin Keane rode him first time at Kempton, and it just a big imposing individual, and it just looked like he travelled through the race beautifully. And then when he went to Quicken, it took a few strides, and he looked like he was just about going to win. He ended up winning by 3.5 lengths, and the maiden has actually worked out quite well. Then he went to Bath, and it was a strange piece of placing by Andrew Baldwin, but he went to Bath, and it actually was. It was it was only 4 runners in the Little Novice Stakes, but the second horse, who was trained by Clive Cox, had a bit of a reputation going in there, and it won on debut at Leicester and probably looked decent enough, and he absolutely made bits of that horse, who was rated in the 80s. So I just love the way he goes about his business. I think he's a real work in progress. He's a son of Frankel, and his dam won a Group 1 in Canada. Spoke to Colin Keane about him. He likes him as well. And he's 14-1 for the Futurity Trophy. I don't know if he's going to go in that direction, but he's certainly been overlooked, I think, because he's run at Kempton and Bath. I think he's a very good horse. And in a wide open year where we potentially could have anything winning a classic next season, I just have a feeling that Item is really, really good.
I seriously regret going last now with my massively obvious one of Bo Echo for the reasons Liam mentioned earlier. He's a Royal Lodge winner, 1 over a mile, 1 at Newmarket. I think if any of them are going to serve it up to the Ballydoyle battalions and the 2,000 guineas, it will be him. And on the subject of Aidan O'Brien, he's trying to break his own record for Group 1 victories in a calendar year. DJ, how's he getting on? Can he do it?
He can. He's, I think, identically placed when he did it, 8 years ago. So 28 is the record, and he's on 22 at the moment, thanks to Precise on Friday. So 7 more to beat the record, and this, the couple of Group 1s in France, obviously for 2-year-olds, is going to be, you'd imagine, pickings for him. So that could get him up to 23 or 24. The Futurity Trophy is the favourite for that. You're up to kind of 24, 25 now. Then you're going into the Breeders' Cup, and you'd imagine he's going to have a pretty top team going into the Breeders' Cup. Mini Hawk is already very short for the turf. Puerto Rico could go for the juvenile. He'll have definitely, you'd imagine, the favourite for the juvenile fillies turf. So if he could manage to get 2 and maybe 3 out of the Breeders' Cup, which would be phenomenal, he really could do it, and it would make it really interesting going into Hong Kong as well, because even talking to him, I think Jan Bruegel is a potential for Hong Kong, so it's already probably in the back of his mind that he's going to need something for these kind of Group and Grade 1 races later on in the year. And the way they've just been improving as every month goes on, it seems to be every month is better than the last month for the Ballydoyle string, so they seem to be blossoming as the season goes on. So it's going to be close. I was surprised. I did a piece last week and I was surprised. I think Paddy Power went 9-2 from to beat the record. And I was like, whoa, I thought that was big, because I think Carl went 5-2. I think it's going to be a lot closer than 9-2. It's going to come down. I think it's going to depend on the Breeders' Cup. I think if he draws a blank at the Breeders' Cup, that's going to be it. But like, even if he doesn't beat it, it is like, look, he has all the bullets to fire, but you still have to fire them. And even to get to 22 at this stage is something else, because at the start of the season you're kind of looking for his real standout performer. And it's funny, at the start of the season I thought it was going to be probably the Line of Winter. I thought might be the one that would be was Antipode's favourite for the Guineas and the Derby. I thought he was going to be the one, and it's not. It's all the others that we didn't really think about. The Delacroix and I suppose a couple of the 2-year-olds have blossomed later on in the season. But Saturday is going to be interesting as well. Champions Day, obviously, and I can't believe Delacroix is running. If you'd offered me 10-1 last week for Delacroix not to win the Champion Stakes but to run in the Champion Stakes, I would have said no, I'm not taking that. I would have preferred to take the 1-10 or 1-12 for him not to run. Really shocked he's running. Presumed he would be straight off the stud after that performance in the Irish Champion Stakes, but it adds so much intrigue to Champions Day, because now you've got a race where it's Ombudsman v Delacroix, and you're going, we'll finally find out who's the best of them. And you've got Calandigan, and you potentially could have Economics, of course, who's coming back. So it is going to be, if they all show up, it is going to be the race of the season by a mile. It's not even going to be close to what's the race of the season. But I think Ombudsman will win.
Ombudsman for DJ, there you go. Not sitting on the fence, Liam. I'm going to get you off the fence as well. Of those two, or maybe Calandigan, maybe, who knows, maybe Economics will bounce back. It would be incredible if that was to happen. Who are you siding with at this early stage?
Yeah, I mean, what a cracking race we could be served up for. It's got the makings to be one of the best races that we've seen, in years, with the level of ability that the likes of Economics, if he's back to full fitness, which William Haggis does. It's been a long road to get back, and credit to the team. They've been updating a lot of people as things go. Obviously, had the gallop at Newmarket as well, so there's a lot of hurdles that they've had to overcome to get to this stage, and hopefully we get to Saturday and he lines up with them all. Calandigan, for me, I think he would be the one that I'd be looking at from sort of away from the the Ombudsman and Delacroix. I was at Ascot the day when the King George, and he was just a superb performance. He's had obviously a bit of a break. Obviously couldn't run in the Arc being a gelding.
How far would he have won the Arc by, do you reckon?
Who knows? But I just think that he's had a bit of a break. This would have been the race when they won the King George. This would have been the race that Connections would have been eyeing up towards the end of the season, and it looks like it's going to be relatively quick ground, a lot quicker than what we're used to in sort of middle of October at Ascot. We're usually used to sort of proper testing ground with the rain, but the rain hasn't come, and it doesn't look like it's going to come. So I think conditions are really going to favour Calandigan, certainly.
We have a bonus segment in this week's front page, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined by senior reporter Chris Cook to discuss the brilliant summer series, The Story of Horse Racing in 20 Races, which has been available to Racing Post Plus subscribers. Chris, great to have you along. You've been really involved with this. What have you enjoyed most about looking back and studying some of these old races?
I really enjoy the history of racing, just per se. I always love looking back at old races, learning stuff about how the sport's developed. And this was a chance to sort of really get into that. I wrote 3 of the articles, read all the others, and it's fun just having been around racing for about 40 years to still be learning new stuff. Like, for example, the article about the evolution in the way jockeys ride, crouched over the horses' withers. It always used to be right up until the end of the 19th century that the jockeys would be sort of upright like a policeman, very old English style of riding. And then, a couple of Americans came over and, sort of crouched down like that in that aerodynamic style and inevitably had the Mickey taken out of them. And, it was seen almost as an offensive thing to be coming over here to the sort of land of where racing had been going for 200 years in the same way with no developments, no changes, and ride like that. And of course, it worked brilliantly. And the very first time, I think, an American jockey came over and rode like that, he won a sprint handicap at Newmarket 8-1. And, within a very short space of time, everyone was having to adapt. It's just fun. And I wrote 3 articles in the series. The most recent one, time-wise, would be Frankie Dettori's Magnificent Seven. I actually remember what that day was like, just sort of going around from one betting shop to another, sort of following the races at Ascot, and a completely different experience from the norm. On a Saturday, as the day goes on, usually the betting shop population thins out a bit, and by the end of the day, it's just me and a couple of other guys, diehards, watching the 6th race. But on that day, as it went on and on, every betting shop I dropped into got sort of busier and busier because everyone was agog to see what Dettori was doing, and also quite a few of them were just sort of backing whatever he was riding that day. It was sort of a completely wild atmosphere compared to what normally happens, and just a one-off, as we now know. That was the one day when everything went against the bookies. And of course, it sort of launched Dettori to become the sort of guy who's really famous, much beyond the normal sort of confines of racing. I really enjoyed it. I think there's an awful lot of detail there, even for people who've been around racing for a very long time. If you can sort of dip into these articles and really find out something about the way your sport has evolved.
No, absolutely. It's a really interesting concept. And we are quite a nostalgic bunch, aren't we, racing fans? We do like looking back and reflecting and studying all those old memories.
Well, and rightly so. I mean, horse racing in this country, I was talking to John Randall about this the other day. John Randall, the Racing Post historian who sort of came up with the list. He was pointing out that racing's history goes back to, I think, 1727. Since then, every single race run in Britain, the result has been recorded and published, initially in the annual racing calendar, and obviously now in lots of different ways. But, basically every race since 1727 recorded. Cricket, football can't boast, a history that goes back that far or anything like. There's an awful lot of history to be poured over and treasured and enjoyed.
No, absolutely. And I've loved it as a quote-unquote young racing fan, just about being under 30. I particularly enjoyed the story of Red Rum having come from a jumps household, or a household that just were obsessed with the Cheltenham Festival, the Grand National. Red Rum really stood out to me. Do you have a favourite, Chris? I'm sure it's like choosing a favourite child, but is there one that really struck you?
Well, not all of these stories are enjoyable in the sense of just being fun. The story that completely drew me in and absorbed me was the Derby of 1913. This is the suffragette Derby, and obviously Emily Davison sort of went onto the track in the middle of the race and protested, and got very sadly killed, by the King's horse that ran over her. And there's this sort of continuing mystery about what was in her mind, what motivated her. Could she possibly have picked out the King's Horse amidst all the runners in that race? Did she intend to martyr herself? Was she hoping to survive? She reached the stage where she wasn't really working with any of the other suffragettes at that point, so she didn't tell anyone what her plans were, and we're just sort of left with this little bit of grainy footage and some of the surrounding circumstances to sort of hint at what was in her mind, and then beyond that, extraordinary tragedy and story of somebody who's really prepared to risk their life for a cause. There's also the sort of the details of the race itself, enormously controversial, and we can't even be sure of the exact order in which the first 8 horses finished, because the judge made a mess of it. He missed, I think it was the 3rd horse past the post, and although there's a little bit of footage that survives taken from a head-on position, they didn't have a camera side on to record the finishing order, and there's this lasting controversy about whether the horse that was first past the post deserved to be disqualified for interference, or whether in fact the horse that ended up as the winner was really the instigator. If we had that head-on footage going all the way back over the last 3 furlongs, you would know for sure what had happened. So it's just it's literally the most dramatic horse race ever run. And there's these sort of surrounding really important mysteries that we still haven't been able to clarify to this day. That's a story that you could really disappear into. There's been an entire book published about it, the sort of 90-second horse race that's produced a sort of 300-page book, which is a real page turner as well. It's gripping stuff.
No, absolutely is, and it's almost cruel to have to fit it into 2 pages rather than 300, but it was brilliantly done, as was the whole series. We won't have any spoilers here about the final race, the article will be published on Monday evening and in Tuesday's Racing Post. Chris, how can the front page listeners and viewers access this brilliant series?
So if you're not already signed up to Racing Post Plus, you can do that. There's a link in the description below this video, I believe. And if you use the code STORY20, then you get your first month as a member of Racing Post Plus for just £20. It's obviously discounted, and you'll be able to get all the other benefits that come with that as well. And you really dive into this series that quite a few of us have spent a long time working on since May. Which, as I say, hopefully is a very rewarding read for anyone.
A lot of hard work and a lot of love has gone into this series. Be sure to take advantage of that offer and check out the story of horse racing in 20 races. All the big horses, all the big trainers and all the big owners represented on British Champions Day on Saturday, just as they were last week at Tattersalls Book 1, where some eye-watering sums were spent on some beautifully bred horses by the likes of Coolmore. Kia Jarabchan and Amo Racing were big players once again. Godolphin, a total of 130 million guineas spent at that sale, and some brilliant coverage by the Racing Post, if I do say so myself. We do have to wait a little while before we see some of those horses run, because it's time for the jumps season, and we've had Willie Mullins setting out his stall, DJ, ahead of his defence of both the Irish and the British Championships.
First of many press mornings, probably played something last week. I wasn't there. My far more esteemed colleague Conor Fennelly was there, and it's just... I suppose you don't forget, but you kind of do, and then you see the list, the famous list that people always tweet, and you say, oh my God, forgot about him, and then you're like, all of a sudden you've got this list of horses, and you're kind of going, how on earth is anybody going to compete with that list of horses? So it is extraordinary. Funny thing is, actually, what I thought was unusual about this season, especially at this stage of the season, we're in mid-October, and you go Champion Hurdle, Champion Chase, Stayers Hurdle, Gold Cup. They're all wide open. Like, it's all 4 and 5 to 1 the field. Usually at this stage you have a real short price favour for at least 1, possibly 2, sometimes 3 championship races. You don't this season. And Willie Mullins doesn't actually have the favour for any of them. So you've got, obviously, Dan Skelton is the favourite for the Champion Hurdle. I think Marie Nationale is favourite for the Champion Chase. Stayers Hurdle is wide open, and Gavin's horse favourite for the Gold Cup. So it's funny that he's got this unbelievable array of top class talent, and he doesn't have the favour for any of the championship races at the moment. So I presume that'll change as the season goes on. What to take out of it? One of the real interesting things, if you think of Factifile and Florida Pearl, 2 of the biggest horses in Willie Mullins' yard over the years. I'm sure there were others, but they're 2 that were exceptions in that Willie didn't bother going over hurdles with them. Factifile straight from bumpers to chasing. Florida Pearl never on the hurdles, straight from bumpers to chasing. And that's what he's doing with Game of Inches, which I thought was really interesting, because when Game of Inches won on debut, I was like, whoa, what is this? Then he went to Cheltenham and it was just all a bit of a mess. Patrick didn't ride him in the race in the end. He picked something else, and obviously Willie won it with the filly. But I'd say Game of Inches, when you look at him, he just looks every inch a chaser. Now, he's going to need probably very, very soft ground to be at his best, but Willie doesn't do this too often, and when he does it, he obviously thinks he's got something really special as a chaser. He obviously thinks that with Game of Inches, so wouldn't be one bit surprised if Game of Inches turned out to be really good. Other than that, so what can you say? Stateman is obviously still underestimated. Looks like Lossiemate is still going to go for the Mayor's Hurdle. Anyway, Gold Cup wise, Gallopin will be back and trying to regain the Gold Cup crown, which is entirely possible given his performance at the end of last season. So it's going to be just incredible to follow the Willie Mullins' journey. He's got some brilliant horses from France in, and what more can you say? He is just a colossus, and it looks like he's going to have. And I suppose the fact that he's aiming so many horses at British races early on, which kind of shocked me to think he's already Tingle Creek, potentially Betfair Chase, fighting fifth. The fact that he's already thinking about British races, not necessarily the British title, but British races for these horses to try and separate them. If I was Dan Skelton, I wouldn't have enjoyed reading the Racing Post last week that much, to be honest, because he's going to struggle to hold off Willie again this season, I think.
No, I was imagining whether we could just put in some live footage of Dan Skelton spitting his cornflakes out, reading that in the Racing Post. Liam,
Cheerios. Dan is Cheerios.
Is he Cheerios, man? Of course, yeah. I should have known. Dan Skelton, though, does have a very good squad, and he does still have that belief. Your pal Nicky Henderson has a few big horses to run. Paul Nicholls is in form. Am I being optimistic that we'll have a British trainer winning the British Championship?
I mean, it'd be nice to have one again winning it, but I think, as we've just touched on there, that the list that we've seen on social media of the horses out on parade at Close Sutton, I mean, that's only a quarter of the top class horses. There's so many missing from that list, so that's those horses that were on there, the likes of Stateman.
We'll give, for people that don't know, we'll give them the list, right? This was the list. I found it here. So this was the HRI National Hunt Season launch. So just the 21 horses were on the list. Gallopin the Sham, Stateman, Anzadam, Cargis, Salvatore Mundi, Bambino Fever, Dino Blue, Lecky Watson, Nick Rocket, Factifile, Gaelic Warrior, Final Demand, Copic the Board, Lossiemouth, Hilete Toms, Jade de Grugy, Majborough, Ballyburn, Impere Pass, Spindleberry, and Aya Maximus. Whoa. There, just for people that don't know the list, that was the list.
The famous list. It's a bit like the Harlem Globetrotters, Liam, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, just the names that the DJ was rolling off the tongue there, the quality, it's never ending for that yard. And I think that the worrying thing is, I suppose, for the likes of Skelton, Henderson, Nicholls, the fact that he's looking at these races in Britain a lot sooner than he would. Obviously, the last couple of years we've kind of just been used to seeing. Obviously, Willie would tackle a lot of the. He might come over to Kempton at Christmas, and he might send one or two over for other races. Obviously, he comes for Cheltenham and stuff, but you don't really start thinking about Willie Mullins in the championship race until you get to Cheltenham and then you get to Aintree, and you just last season was just a case of, oh, here we go again. And obviously the way that he took that, the Grand National by storm, and these big races obviously matter, but he's sort of setting his stalls out a lot earlier. I think it just shows you the level of quality, the desire and hunger he has to hold on to that title more than ever. I think it's going to be a lot harder this year for the likes of Skelton, Nichols, Henderson to sort of keep up with him if he starts his means to go on and fires in some big winners. Obviously the Grade 1 horses, the big races are where it matters most, and obviously at this stage you look at some of those markets for the Cheltenham Festival as we do. We seem to get earlier and earlier every year, but he hasn't got the favourites for a lot of those races. But all it takes is one or two performances to go in this side of Christmas, and we're getting into Cheltenham, and he's got the favourite for 90% of the Grade 1. So really, it's exciting that he's looking at these races. It'd be nice if we get some of the British trainers doing the same and going for some of the big races over in Ireland. But it's going to be Dan's going to have a real fight in his hands, certainly, because it's as well as it's all well and good having the new Lion winning Grade 1 after Grade 1 as you'd like to see him do, but there's other horses that need to stick to the top of the game. And Willie knew that Dan and Paul was going to come back as well, and Nicky's got a lot of talent as well in the yard. So Willie knows that these trainers are not going to just roll over and let him come and take the title that should be in Britain. So it should be set us up for an exciting year nevertheless.
Absolutely.
I have a question for you, Liam, if that's all right.
Go for it.
Can I ask you a question? Okay. You're our excellent Lambourn correspondent, okay? What is your gut telling you, from speaking to Nicky, from speaking to everybody around the horse? Do you think the old Constitution Hill will return this season? Can you convince us that Constitution Hill, probably on his day, the best horse or one of the best horses I've ever seen? Do you think we're going to see that version this season, or are we going to see this absolute catastrophe that we saw in Punchestown, where he looked like he was jumping a bed of nails rather than hurdles? Like, what can we expect? What's your vibes? What vibes are you getting in Seven Barrows?
The vibes I'm getting, as I've been getting for a few weeks, is that he's back, and he's going to be back to his best. They've obviously.
You believe them?
I do, because I mean we've seen Nicky do it before. We Sprinter, obviously he brought Sprinter Sacra back to win at the top level, and I just think that a few people, I think they're just overlooking the level of ability that Nicky Henderson has as a trainer, and I just think that there were two heavy falls obviously we've seen at Aintree and Cheltenham, and I just think that Punchestown was just a run too far to come back and to try and take on.
Do you not think, this is my fear, right? This is my fear. My fear is, right, I hate mice, okay? Mice absolutely scared the bejesus out of me, okay?
Yeah.
So no matter what anybody, any therapist or any expert can do, there is no way they could ever make me okay with mice, okay? Because I have a fear from childhood about mice, okay? So anytime I see a mouse or I even hear something in bed at night, I am freaked out. I'm standing on top of the bed, okay? I just think it looks now, Constitution Hill now looks like I am with mice, because when he approached that first hurdle at Punchestown, it just looked like, whoa, I'm petrified kind of thing. He gave it about 3 foot in the air, like. And my fear is that when it comes to the crunch, when he's rattling down to these hurdles, those Grade 1s, that it's going to be in his mind, God, remember what happened to me at Cheltenham, and remember what happened to me at Aintree. Whoa, Jesus, I'm a bit scared now. How psychologically can we get that out of Constitution Hill's head?
Yeah, I think it's a massive thing. I think in day-to-day life, and anyone, if something's happened in your past where it's almost freaked you out a little bit, you are going to sort of reminisce, and the Henderson camp are doing everything they can. They've obviously basically starting from scratch with him, with Constitution Hill. He's going to be taken away for plenty of practice before the fight in Fifth. We obviously won't know until race day when it matters the most, but there will be an element of doubt certainly in the mind of the horse, because like you said, you can't wipe that from a memory. You can't wipe that from anyone's memory if they've had a scare or anything. So it's more of a mind thing than a physical thing, I think, certainly, to get him back to get him in the right frame of mind, to get him back. It's going to be a huge challenge, make no bones about it. Like we know the difficulties that the horse will face to try and get back to the level we've seen him get back to, and I can imagine certainly for the first few jumps at the fight in Fifth, if he gets there and everything, that the heart monitor, the blood pressure, everything will be up for Henderson and his team, because there will be doubt in the minds that this could happen again. It was obviously a huge shock to see it happen in the Champion Hurdle. Obviously there was a major scare in the Unibet hurdle at Cheltenham at the last hurdle. To do it then again at Aintree, something isn't right. The way he's approaching the hurdles, something obviously needs to change. Whether you can change the horse's way of jumping, who knows? They're doing everything they can to get the horse back. It would obviously be a huge story for racing itself if Constitution Hill can come back and win.
That'll be class. If I had one wish for this season, it would be to see the Constitution Hill I saw in the Supreme back. That's my wish for the season.
Well, it would be, because I was at Kempton at the last Christmas when he was returning for a long layoff, and it wasn't a proper betting race that we're seeing, but the roars and the atmosphere, it was like, right, the horse is back. This is it. Let's go on. And obviously, things didn't materialise, but at the same time, it's very much a comeback mission again with the horse. Listen, we could sit here and talk about a whole show about the horse. I suppose the only disadvantage is that he's an 8-year-old now. He'd be taking on a lot of younger horses, a lot of fresher horses. It's a huge challenge, but Nicky Henderson's done it again, and I firmly believe that the man can get Constitution Hill back.
Yes, could be one of the stories of the season. There's plenty to unpack there, not least the image I can't get out my mind of DJ in silk pyjamas bouncing up and down on the bed for fear of a mouse in the room. I know what I'll be ordering, a fake mouse, before you're in town next week. DJ is part of the Racing Post Big Jump Off launch. We'll have all the key information ahead of the jump season. What can you tell us? Yeah,
so next Monday, 6 o'clock, the big jump off, and have we got a lineup for you? We have got Tom Siegel, of course, price-wise. We've got Mr. Saturday Sizzlers himself, Paul Keeley, and we've got Mr. Melbourne Cup, Johnny Deneen, who's over and in the studio, along with Bet365's Pat Cooney. So Tom Siegel, Paul Keeley and Johnny Deneen in the one room for an hour or so. Doesn't get any better than that. So we'll have a bit of crack. We will hopefully steer you in the right direction for the jump season. And I always think with these kind of jump season previews, you need your mind refocused, and that's what these guys are going to do for you, because I'm sure they'll be putting in plenty of research and hopefully trying to find some good anti-post wagers for you. So that's 6 o'clock next Monday. It will be live on YouTube. 6 o'clock next Monday for the big jump off. Johnny Deneen, Paul Keeley, Tom Siegel and Pat Cooney from Bet365, our sponsors, joining myself. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, that is definitely not to be missed. Be sure to tune into that on Monday. All that's left for me to do now is to thank you very much for watching and listening to this week's edition of The Front Page, and to say a big thank you to my guests Liam Head and David Jennings. Thank you ever so much. Wishing you all the best. Have a good week and enjoy British Champions Day on Saturday.